Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where over the weekend, quite tragically, Adam West passed away at the age of 88 after a brief battle with leukemia, and the world mourned. It was quite touching, actually, to see the remembrances on Twitter especially just come pouring in. I mean, there's a little bit of a maudlin aspect to these celebrity deaths because the media, of course, seizes on it and makes it a news story, right? And then they have all the, celebrating the actor's career, etc. So that always drives a little bit of the social media chatter. But you could tell with Adam West that he was not only beloved for his work, but that his contributions to the Batman, mythos were respected, which is just as important as loved. But it's interesting. I think there were two stories that came out of this. The first is the very obvious one, and again, how much he had impacted both the character and people's lives. But then there's like a little bit of a sadder story about what can happen to working actors who get this like one iconic role, and how there's different levels even there of what can happen, and how I think fandom in today's incarnation has created a situation where it's supportive of some of those actors who slipped through the cracks. So anyway, let's start with the happier side of the story. And that, of course, is how much people love, and still to this day love, Adam West's version of Batman. Obviously, a very campy version of the character, but the first version of the character really to pop into the mainstream culture, right? I mean, Marvel superheroes are very new in retrospect, in the big picture. That's the right word. In the big picture, Marvel's pretty new to the scene when it comes to, the most casual fan of entertainment, right? But the DC characters have been known for quite some time, and the Batman live-action series that starred Adam West, made a whole generation of fans, Batman fans, of kids, Batman fans. And I would say it's similar to what Batman the Animated Series accomplished. So Adam West is a little bit like an on-screen version of like Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, and we're going to circle back to Mark Hamill with the sadder side of this story. But also, of course, he's so well known for generating in today's social media culture tons of great quotes that are used, gifs, so many great Batman gifs. Like you might recall when at the end of The Dark Knight Rises, they had that bomb aspect of the story, and everyone used that fantastic clip from I think it was actually the Batman movie, where he was running around the docks with a bomb, like a cartoon bomb, and it was I think really charming. That's actually a theme of today's Morning Movie News episode, because the second story has to deal with a considerable amount of charm and goofiness as well. But that's a great way to describe Adam West. And of course, he won over a whole bunch of new fans with his voiceover work on Family Guy as Mayor West. And that was really quite nice of Seth MacFarlane to cast him in that role. Seth MacFarlane, it turns out, had written a pilot that I think it was an animation pilot early on in his career before Family Guy that Adam West was going to be the star of. It didn't work out, and I think it's wonderful that Seth MacFarlane remembered him. And you're going to see, because Adam West was struggling so heavily financially, that was an incredibly kind thing to do, as well as something that benefited the Family Guy show, because Adam West was very good at what he contributed there. But a really great individual, great personality. I'm glad that he didn't go bitter, considering what happened to him, as you're about to see. But he's right up there with George Reeves and Linda Carter, as these actors who made these who introduced these characters to, again, people who didn't read comic books. So I think that's really important. And of course, quite tragically, there's only one left, one remaining, Linda Carter. And she's enjoying a bit of a renaissance with, this renewed focus on DC. She started out playing the President on Supergirl, and she's, of course, been doing the rounds and been quite supportive of the new Wonder Woman movie, which, has brought the spotlight back on her as well. And that's what also I want to talk about. What goes on with actors and what happens when they land this one iconic role, but then they can't get anything else. It defines them. And I think it's particularly a problem with television. And I say problem because you're going to see there's varying degrees of it. But television runs for quite some time. So it really establishes you as a certain character. I think that's maybe not becoming less of a problem these days, because the line between TV and movies is blurred so much. Although to some degree, Bryan Cranston I think he'll always be Walter White. I think Bryan Cranston just picks weird projects. I think what happened to his career post Breaking Bad is kind of his own fault. But I'm talking about, for instance, somebody compared Adam West over the weekend to Leonard Nimoy, and I thought that was a very good comparison on one level, but a bad comparison on another. Leonard Nimoy, of course, also being an actor who was like, will I forever be Spock, but then learned to embrace it and was happy that that defined him, and that's who he was to so many fans. But here's the thing, and also, by the way, David Schwimmer also has complained about this, but has never embraced it, that he doesn't want to be Ross forever. And it's like, you know, a lot of actors never are successful. So it's really a double-edged sword. Like, it would be wonderful to have a diverse career where you get to play all sorts of different types of roles, but I don't think there's anything wrong with being playing an iconic character that is beloved, again, the world over, and if it runs for a long time, you know, the magic number is you want 5 seasons. Once you go past 5 seasons, that's why they always throw a party for a show once it goes past 5 seasons, because therefore it can go into syndication. So it's really a, we're going to make a ton of money party, because that means you get checks forever, you get residuals. One of the reasons everybody associated with Seinfeld is so wealthy is because they just get so much money from those reruns. And the same thing with the Big Bang Theory cast in particular. But those checks come in forever. And Leonard Nimoy, of course, I'm sure was, you know, quite well off because of what he did with Star Trek, and same for David Schwimmer with Friends. Those are extremely those reruns are also extremely popular. But here's the problem for Adam West. Batman, his Batman show only lasted 3 seasons, and it was really only a hit for 1.5 seasons, and that's being generous. So he had a situation where, you know, and that was a time when there weren't a lot of reruns. So there was no money coming in. And in fact, interestingly and, you know, tragically, Adam West had to take his family and leave Hollywood and go to Idaho, where I'm sure they were very happy, but there aren't a lot of acting gigs in Idaho. I mean, I think that that must have really been difficult for him. But he stayed positive, which I think is something he should also be remembered for. And also he talked about, I saw some quotes about him saying how wonderful it was to see how much Batman impacted people and how happy he was to be able to visit with those fans. And I think that underscores the importance of how the convention circuit has evolved. It's not only great for the fans to be able to go to these celebratory events, and I've always had like a little bit mixed feelings about it. You know, for instance, like the Walking Dead cast members and Star Wars cast members will, you know, charge for autographs. But I think that when you look at someone like Adam West, who, you know, really struggled financially, I think it's wonderful that the convention circuit rose up to not only support him financially, but also to remind him of what he had accomplished. I just think that's just so fabulous. And it makes me feel really nice that he had that. And it reminds you of what happened to Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill, you know, Harrison Ford went on, but Mark Hamill and even Carrie Fisher, you know, they did not go on to these great film careers post Star Wars. Mark Hamill luckily discovered voiceover work, and it's quite famous for being the Joker. But, you know, and Carrie Fisher, of course, was a very successful screenwriter, particularly a script doctor, which means she would fix screenplays, you know, off the books. If you're a script doctor, you don't get credited for it, but you get paid a lot of money. It's a good gig. I don't really know if that really exists to the same extent that it once did, because now everybody gets the credit. Like, for instance, what Tony Gilroy did to Rogue One. Everybody knew he was doing it, although he wasn't credited, so I guess he was kind of like a movie doctor there. But, you know, they're both very lucky, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. Of course, Carrie Fisher tragically passed away and couldn't get her movie. She really wanted Episode 9 to be her movie, and it was revealed that it was planned to be. But that was her moment to return to the spotlight. And so it's really such a gift for those actors that Star Wars came back. And so I think it's really interesting, and I think Adam West's passing in particular shines a light, because, you know, Carrie Fisher's passing, you know, there are so many other things at play there. But, you know, Adam West's, I think, just really allows you to take a moment and to understand, and I hope be sympathetic to this aspect of the biz, of show business. So I'm glad that he was able to come back with Family Guy, and I'm glad he had the convention circuit to not only, again, support him financially, but to allow him to realize that he had actually a very wonderful career. It's so sad. Okay, as I tweeted, Godspeed, Caped Crusader. All right, so let's cheer up with a Tony Awards story. So the Tony Awards were last night. I'm not a big theater person, but I like to check it out. I like to see what the host does, and I also like to see performances from all the big shows that are nominated. And it's fun to see what's out there. And it's a little bit like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which also does which spotlights Broadway shows, because you can be like, should I see this? Because it's very expensive to see Broadway shows. With the movie, it's like $20, and if it's not good, you're like, oh well, I'm out $20, whatever, okay? But you can be out like hundreds of dollars to go and see a Broadway show. So you want to get a little bit of a taste. So that's why I tuned in last night, and I was absolutely blown away by Kevin Spacey's opening number. And I've put a link down below in the video description so you can watch it as well. Now, unfortunately, he predicted that people might be harsh in their reviews of his hosting, and that was actually the case with at least a couple of outlets, which I thought was, I thought a little bit harsh considering how much heart he poured into his hosting gig. And also how good a singer he is. I was just absolutely amazed at what a good song and dance man he is. Now, some of you, when I tweeted this last night, pointed out that he did do, the Bobby Darin story about Beyond the Sea. And I saw that movie, and I thought he was okay. I was more like, you can't play Bobby Darin. I know this is a dream of yours, Kevin Spacey, but I think you timed out. But anyway, here he sang with a lot of emotion, which really surprised me. I'd not expected that. Bobby Darin, he's doing covers of famous Bobby Darin songs, and it's different performing a song for Top 40 than it is for something that's a musical, because you're telling a story with the song, and his ability to do so was amazing. So if I were a studio executive or a producer while I was watching the Tony Awards, I'd be like, writing myself a note saying, get Kevin Spacey's agent on the phone because I want him in a movie musical. I think that, and they're making so many now because of the success of Beauty and the Beast, somebody should call Kevin Spacey right away because he just was absolutely amazing. But what was also so great about it is that I thought he was such a charmingly unapologetic theater nerd. I just loved, and I had never seen that side of Kevin Spacey before, so it made me feel closer to him. And it also made me appreciate his performances that I've seen of his even more so, because they're all so different than what he seems to actually be like as a person. Sometimes you think that someone's, just playing themselves or varying degrees of themselves, but that's fine. Like Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford's not like this amazing actor, but he's what he does, and Chris Pratt. There are a lot of people make the comparison between the two of those, but they do a fabulous job. But Kevin Spacey clearly has much more range than I had realized. I was also surprised, by the way, that he made. I've always discuss, when it comes up, when it's appropriate to the conversation, that Kevin Spacey, has been a closeted actor, but less so as he's gotten older. He started to show up to awards shows with a male date. And, of course, on House of Cards, he plays at the very least a bisexual character with some, gay sex scenes that he's had on the show. I think 2 at this point. But anyway, I thought last night at the Tonys, he was making it an open joke that he was, still had like maybe 1 foot in the closet, if that. And I thought that was very interesting. I think that, of course, it's his choice how he wants to handle it. And I think maybe just to like make it a non-issue is perhaps the way he's going. And, in today's environment, does anyone really have to make an announcement? It's a tough call. I think on the one hand, it's like, should it really be a big deal? But on the other hand, the head of Apple, I think was really, he came out of the closet a couple of years ago. I don't know how many people paid attention to it. But, he became public. I think everybody who worked with him obviously knew about it, but publicly. And he said it was important to him to show that there was, that the head of Apple, was a member of the LGBT community, and to show how many options there are for the people of that community to be not only, maybe more careers they've been historically associated with, but can be CEOs of tech companies. And I thought that was wonderful. So I thought that was great. But I'm curious how you feel about it, because also every time I talk about Kevin Spacey being gay, there's always someone in the comments who's like, no way. But if you watch the Tonys opening number, I think you'll be like, oh yeah. All right, so the other thing was, I thought the one misstep that he did with his opening number, or no, not with his opening number, but throughout the show, is that he trotted out his Bill Clinton and Johnny Carson impressions. And again, he's just so charmingly, unapologetically nerdy. I love it. He's obviously a big Johnny Carson fan, but I felt that it was so it was reaching back too far. And I wish that the producers had said, I love your enthusiasm, Kevin, and I'm so glad that you like Johnny Carson, and your impression is quite good, but it's just not it's been so long since anyone's seen Johnny Carson, it's just not going to land with the audience. And so I wish somebody had said, well, just, keep singing songs or telling some fun jokes or telling some behind-the-scenes story. I loved when he said he took one of the first selfies, when he made his Broadway debut. Again, incredibly charming individual. He seemed like such a nice person to hang out with. But then the other thing I wanted to talk about the Tonys really quickly before we get to, I have 2 viewer questions today. I thought that it was really a shame that Bette Midler did not perform a number from Hello, Dolly. Because as I said, you want to test out and see if it's worth the money for these shows. And Hello, Dolly is one of the most expensive shows on Broadway right now. It's incredibly expensive to get a ticket and hard to get a ticket. And if you want to sit anywhere near the front, it's really expensive. So I thought she would perform a number, but unfortunately she didn't. David Hyde Pierce performed a number from the show, and he was fantastic. Talk about someone who will always be known as a character. I think he will always be known as Niles from Frasier. But he was good here. I mean, he did his best to cast off, the Niles role, and I think he's always been very, thankful for his work on Frasier, but I thought he was fabulous. But anyway, I wanted to see Bette Midler, who of course won Best Actress in a Musical. But she didn't perform. She came out right afterwards to make a speech or present an award. But also when I looked at online, because I liked what he did so much, David Hyde Pierce, I thought maybe I'd go see the show anyway, it said, oh, Bette Midler is starting to drop out of dates and Donna Murphy's going to fill in for her. And I was like, what? I'm not paying a whole bunch of money not to see Bette Midler. And it scared me because I was like, well, Bette Midler, it's the, one of the, I think it's like the fastest selling show on Broadway. She's won a Tony now. I think Bette Midler, it really started to feel like she's like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Like she would just keep dropping out of dates, and then I'd be stuck with very expensive tickets to see essentially her understudy, with all due respect to Donna Murphy. And so I just thought that was really a shame. And I think that mercenary tactic is really, I think, not a likable characteristic. And I wish that someone had pulled her aside and said, hey, Bette Midler, unless you want to just undo all the goodwill of your returning to Broadway, maybe you should perform a number here at the Tonys. Because here's the thing. I think to some degree she's like, if you want to see me perform Hello, Dolly, pay for a ticket. But it's like, and aside from people being like, well, I don't know if I want to pay for it, not everybody can, afford to see the show if they're in the New York area. But for a lot of theater fans, not everybody can afford to go to New York to then therefore pay to see the show. And so I think she really should have done a number. And so it was an interesting contrast to see how wonderful Kevin Spacey was and how not wonderful Bette Midler was. It really kind of made me upset with Bette Midler. Okay, as you can see. All right, so I have 2 viewer questions. The first is from Julian. So Julian says, hi Grace, I'm not sure if it's Morning Movie Newsworthy. It is, but I'd like your opinion on something. What do you think will be the difference between Dracula Untold and The Mummy regarding the future of the Dark Universe? We all know Dracula was supposed to be the beginning of Dark Universe, but that never happened because of its bad reviews. However, it did manage to make a lot of money compared to its small budget, and it has a 23% on Rotten Tomatoes, while The Mummy only has a 17%. Who would have seen that coming? I think anyone who knows Alex Kurtzman's work. But anyway, and it's not expected to make money against its $125 million budget. That's actually untrue, Julian. It's going to do very well overseas, as it has already. It's actually Tom Cruise's biggest worldwide debut ever. I'm guessing Universal will not backtrack since it's official, but do you think maybe now they'll introduce Dracula since it proved to be more successful? I watch your videos every day, and I'm always looking forward to see what you have to say on news and movies and TV. Thanks for reading, Julian. Sorry there are no emojis, but I'm not a pro user at them like you are. No worries. Great question. Here's the thing. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with Dark Universe going forward. I've recommended they fire Alex Kurtzman. We'll see what happens. But of course, they've made it official. There's no going back. And I think Bride of Frankenstein has hit written all over it. So I think they're just going to have tunnel vision and keep going forward. And they have said these movies will not, they'll all be separate, which then why are you calling it a cinematic universe? It makes no sense. And why'd everybody take their picture together? But anyway, I think Luke Evans would love to be a part of this. And I think he would make perhaps a very good Dracula, particularly, I liked him in Dracula Untold. But I think that after his turn in Beauty and the Beast, he suddenly, I would think, become more valuable, although not signing a lot of deals. He's going to be on this, like, The Alienist on, like, I think TBS or TNT with Daniel Bruhl and Dakota Fanning. But, he had that deal beforehand. But, so, he has not got, surprisingly, not a lot of deals signed off of Beauty and the Beast, which I find amazing considering it's a $1 billion picture. But we'll see what happens eventually. We'll know eventually because these actors will hopefully work again. I'm talking Dan Stevens, Emma Watson, etc. Only Josh Gad seems to continue to get work. Josh Gad. What a machine. So anyway, I would consider maybe bringing him in after, again, the success of Beauty and the Beast, but maybe they just want to keep looking forward. I think they're going to bet it all on Bride of Frankenstein and see what happens. But if I don't know what the deals are, if they're pay or play deals with the rest of the cast that they signed. If you're not familiar with pay or play, it means that even if they don't make the movie, they have to pay you. And a lot of times, I would think to get names that big to commit to something like this, I would suspect they are pay or play deals, which would be ridiculous on the part of Universal because they had to make so many of them for Javier Bardem and Johnny Depp. I mean, those are, I would expect probably very expensive deals. But anyway, so good for them. They made a check even for just maybe taking one stinking photo. So we'll see. But I would consider it. And I would make them interchange. I would make these movies cross over. I think I think they can't seem to do one single thing right with Dark Universe, which is unfortunate considering how much intense interest there is from fans. So we'll see, but I'm curious how you guys feel. Do you want to see Luke Evans' Dracula back in there? Or do you think they should just jettison both these movies now? I'm sure if someone had gone back in time and said, The Mummy is going to get a worse Rotten Tomatoes score than Dracula Untold, Universal would be like, no. But that's what happened. All right, so the final thing of the day, a viewer question, comes from Walter, a.k.a. the European guy. I love your Twitter handle. And Walter says, how does location scouting work? Is there a database for this, or is someone actually traveling around for each movie? It's a big planet. Globe emojis. Love it. That's a great question, Walter. So the answer is that location scouting is a city-specific job. Someone isn't a location scout for, let's say, Universal. They don't have like an in-house location scout that's like, oh, wherever you're going to shoot your movie, I'll take care of it. What you do is you decide where you need to shoot your movie, which is often decided by tax breaks, where they have a large film industry. For instance, from like Morocco is like, if you want to have anything takes place in like the Middle East, Hollywood's version of the Middle East, it usually happens in Morocco because, also security reasons, like stuff like that. And because they have a very strongly established film industry there because so much is filmed there. So you'd usually decide where you want to shoot based on what the script calls for and monetary reasons, right? Like countries will give huge tax breaks as an incentive because it brings work to their country. Hollywood, in fact, California, in fact, has had to become very competitive because so much production has moved outside of not just the state, but the state to other states because, Pittsburgh, for instance, is very aggressive in getting people to shoot in their city. But also outside of the country even. So that's how you decide where you want to shoot. So you decided where you want to shoot. Then you go find someone who's a location manager in that city. And that person has a database. So they have like places they know. It's their job to find locations. So I'm sure they're like, okay, well, when you have a location, you're like, okay, it has to be a place that I can shut down. It has to be a place where we can bring in all this equipment. It has to be a place where I can also put everybody's trailers and all the truck equipment, rentals. And also you can, I think, would often be able to work with the film commissions of each city. Each city usually has a film commission, and they too have locations. And I'm sure location scouts registered with them. So the production goes, we need a location scout. And if they don't already have somebody that the studio uses every time they shoot in that location because it's so popular, I'm sure that the film commission of that area can say, well, this is who we recommend and this is in the area who knows what they're doing. So that person has a database, or if they don't have a specific location already that would work, then it's their job to go and find it. Right? To walk around the city, and then also to secure it. That's something else a location manager does. They're like, okay, I want to shoot here. Let's sign the contracts, make sure that we protect, and also when they're there, make sure that we protect the location, that we don't damage it, and that we can, leave and it's in pretty much the same shape that we found it in. So that's how it works. I hope that explains it to you, Walter. Fabulous question. I love it. It comes out of nowhere. It's perfect. Thank you so much for asking it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down what you think of today's top 2 stories and the 2 viewer questions, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and, of course, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.